I'm Rod Smith from Awabapod, and my guest today for Awabapod is one I'm very excited about. He's a proud Wiradjuri man from Wellington, New South Wales, has worked in schools across the Hunter and Central Coast, as well as southwestern Sydney. From 2010 to 12, our guest managed the Aboriginal education team for southwestern Sydney, covering 276 schools, working to effectively implement the Aboriginal education policy at a local school level and across the region. After 4 years as the principal of Newcastle High School, decided to take on a new challenge and become the Pro-Vice Chancellor of Indigenous Strategy and Leadership of the University of Newcastle. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, mums and dads, and all the beautiful Newcastle Knights fans out there, welcome to Newcastle's one and only Mr. Nathan Towney. How are you, brother, and how's things?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. Thank you. You've said it all. Now I can go home.
Hey, there you go.
All done.
That's a bit of an itinerary there. Yeah. And a lot more to come?
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah. Yep. There's a fair bit to do.
Firstly, how are you, and how are you handling the whole COVID situation, you as a person?
Yeah, mate. It's been tricky. It's new space for everyone, isn't it? It's crazy. I hasn't had too much of an impact in the role that I play at the university, but it's played a major role across the sector. And just for me as a family, I think there's actually been some benefits in slowing down, reprioritising what's important for us as a family, and lots of times where I would have been scheduled to be travelling, and that's not happening. So it's actually been really nice to be able to just get home and take the kids to the park, and not have to be places where I normally would have to be. So that's actually been really nice to spend that quality time with the family.
It's funny you should say all that, because there has been a lot of positives come out of this negative that we're finding around this staying home and the whole shutting down situation. But you're handling it okay. Yeah,
mate. Yeah, no, it's been okay. We brushed the cobwebs off the push bikes, and we've been doing lots of bike rides, and just being outside with the kids and stuff. It's actually been pretty good.
Look, I'd like to go back in time, and you said you're a Wiradjuri man from Wello. What was life and school like for you growing up as a kid?
Yeah, mate, it was great. I love growing up in a small country town in Wellington. School was fantastic. The kids that you start with kindergarten are the ones that you graduate with in year 12. So, and they're still my closest and best mates now. We catch up regularly, and even though we're scattered across the place, Christmas time in Wello and other times where we try and catch up together as a group is always really fun. I grew up with a lot of me mob. So, at Wellington High, the large proportion of Aboriginal students at the school, and I'd say 99% of those were my cousins. It's just something that I never really thought much about. I took for granted the fact that I was growing up, going down to the river on the weekends, and anyone from Wello will know the shallows and the cliff, and they were building rope swings and mudslides and all that sort of stuff floating down the river from the mission down to the low level bridge, and it was fun, mate. We didn't have a care in the world. We played a lot of sport. We had a really good footy side going through high school, and so we got to travel a lot as a group, and that probably brought us even closer. So mate, I just have such fond memories of my childhood, and Wellington, that'll always be home to me. I love the place.
Every community has one surname, the biggest mob there. Who was that out that way?
My
there a couple?
Yeah, there's probably a couple. My nan's a Stanley,
yeah.
And so there's a lot of Stanleys in Wello and out in the Central West. There's a lot of RCs, a lot of Rileys. There's some really big families out there. We're all interconnected.
You were talking there about football, and researching you. It says that you signed with the Canterbury Bulldogs when you were in year 12. Spent 3 years with them, but was injured and decided to become a physical education teacher. Is that when you realised your problems started by signing with the Bulldogs and not the Newcastle Knights?
Yeah, mate, I was probably pretty lucky that we had a good school side, other fellas making me look good.
So how did that happen? How did you get picked up from being out there?
Yeah, mate, we made it a long way in what was then called the Commonwealth Bank Cup. So our school side... we beat St Greg's, we beat Duval, who had Dean Witters and a lot of the boys from Armidale. That was a bit of a grudge match. We only just got them. And then we ended up playing a TV game against Erindale College from Canberra, and they had Todd Payton and Royston Lightning and Teddy Simpson and all those boys. So we made it a long way for a small country town. We made the top 8, and we were beating Erindale at half time, but they came over the top of us and beat us. And from that starting school side, we had a lot of young fellas that got signed to go to Sydney. So people like Blaine Stanley, who's played first grade at Cronulla and South.
Yeah.
Trent Runciman went to the Bulldogs and then went to the Tigers. So yeah, we were pretty lucky. We had a really good group and a fantastic group around us as well that looked after us and gave us some good structures and made us enjoy the game. That was probably the most important thing.
So being injured, was you still able to play knockouts? The New South Wales Aboriginal Rugby League state knockout?
Yeah.
Long weekend of October?
My first year down at the Bulldogs was 98. So that was my first year and I played a full...
Who was coaching then, first grade?
I don't even know, mate. I wasn't playing first grade. I was playing Jersey Flegg. Stan Cutler was our coach. He was an ex-Bulldogs first grader. But I played a full season there. I'd never lifted a weight in my life before I got down there, so it was a big culture shock moving from Wello to Belmore. I lived in the Bulldogs house with 7 other guys, and we had an old Irish couple that lived behind us that did all our cooking and looked after us. It was very strict, but it was a good introduction into the city life. And then at the end of that year, played at the knockout. We actually won the knockout that year. My claim to fame. I'm disappointed you didn't have that in your research, but anyway. With the Wellington Wedgetails, we beat them.
I never had the privilege of winning one, so I didn't want to bring it up.
Well, that's the only one I've ever won and only one I ever will win as a player anyway. So that was probably the highlight of my career is doing that. Yeah. And then it was the next season in 99 that I actually, first trial game, I had best off-season I've ever had. Went down to Canberra and played the Raiders in a trial match and did my ACL. And then, I always like to say it was the injuries and not lack of talent, mate, that why I didn't make it in footy. But, upon reflection, it's probably the best thing that ever happened to me because I then went to uni, became a school teacher and, then I wouldn't be where I am today if that didn't happen. So, it's probably a blessing in disguise, to tell you the truth.
Mm. So you was the first Indigenous principal at Newcastle High and becoming the 25th Aboriginal principal in total across the state. Firstly, congratulations on making that remarkable list. And I say that knowing the history of this country, with the education of our people and the hardships, especially, I had parents from the country and what they had to struggle and what they had to do just to get to school. And secondly, I didn't even know we had that many Aboriginal principals in total across the state. Was you aware of that list and did you know any of them?
Yeah, it's a pretty good network that we have in New South Wales of Aboriginal educators, and that list is growing. That'd be more now, which is fantastic. And the department, to their credit, have worked really hard and strategically over a long period of time to get more Aboriginal teachers in the profession, and really have some targeted leadership programs. Not only the department but also the New South Wales Teachers Federation, which were instrumental in building my leadership capacity, and in particular Charlene Emsenboyd, the Aboriginal coordinator there. And so it's a really good network. We catch up. The principal network, Aboriginal principal network, got together frequently. Also connect with the Maori principals from New Zealand, and so it is a really good network and support each other as much as we possibly can.
How do you find school with yourself and this day and age to the stories of your parents and your grandparents? Do they tell you much? Do they have much hardships?
Yeah, and mate, to be honest, Dad doesn't like talking about it a lot.
Yeah,
and so it's sometimes a bit of a no-go zone, to be honest, because it was so hard. Yeah, and it's when I talk to. Well, Dad's only got one sibling left now, Auntie Ruth, but I try to have as many yarns with her as I possibly can. She's sometimes a bit more open than what Dad is, but we know it was hard, and Dad left school at a young age and worked on building the Burrendong Dam wall. And so there's lots of stories, but I love taking my kids out to where Dad grew up on the Common. We go out there frequently when we go home, and there's an old shack that's still out there that the family lived in for some period of time. And I love my kids running through there, and Dad actually opens up to them a bit more than anyone else. And so it's good to just sort of take them out there and then sit back and listen, because I actually learn different parts of the story or if we take visitors out there, he'll open up a bit more and tell stories to them. Then you think, I haven't heard that part yet. And so, it's you're just trying to add different pieces to the puzzle. But my experiences at school, I just can't compare. It's just completely different. We had it pretty good, and I think the kids these days, it's the whole structure of school wasn't really set up for our culture and the knowledge that we have has never really been valued, and so that's placed us in a position, an interesting position, and probably explain some of the stats that's around our people in education. And I think schools are now more open and starting to understand, not just schools, but I think the whole globe are starting to understand that First Nations people across the world have some pretty important information to tell everyone. And it's I think it's important that story's told, and that schools have a responsibility, and universities to actually prioritise that learning and that knowledge and that the way that we learn as well. There's a lot that everyone can learn from that. So it's part of my job now is to roll that out across the university, which I'm really excited about.
Great. That is great to hear. So Pro Vice Chancellor, the PVC. That's I think it's a pretty cool title. Have you thought about getting like a mask and a cape, and walking around the uni or Wallatuka and going, "Oi, Pro Vice Chancellor here, step back, I got this." Like, I don't know, when I kept reading about you, and I just get the Pro Vice Chancellor, and like in my head I just started thinking like Batman, and I think that's how I'd be walking around campus.
But I kept thinking of those weird university caps, and because it took me a long while to work out what it meant. And when you tell someone you're a principal, people know that, and it's very easy, and it's people think that's fantastic and it's quite prestigious. And then when you now say you're a Pro Vice Chancellor, it sort of sounds a bit flash, but no one really knows what it means. And so you then got to spend time talking about what you actually do. So but I haven't thought about getting a cape or a.
You should.
I should.
I'm happy to design you something.
Yeah, well, that'd be good.
You better start working out. So being in the education department like for so many years and creating and following models and curriculum so our kids and people can have a better education, with Awabapod, who I work for, are primarily a health organisation. Do you see the similarities with education and health for our kids and our people?
I don't think you can talk about one without the other. They're just so intertwined. And there's some big pieces of work that we're doing at the university now, and working with Raylene from Awabapod around the health space. I think they're very much related, and I think the more that we can collaborate across what people might see as different sectors, that's the only way we're really going to be able to help our mob is to do that collaboration and work together, and share resources, and because we're all trying to do the same thing, and that's improve outcomes for our people. And so that's the university is such a significant place in the region, and we do have some amazing resources in terms of people, in terms of buildings and different things that we can utilise. And so I think I like to call on all those resources to make sure that we're using those when we collaborate, so that we can make the best informed decisions and provide the best opportunities for our people.
With the whole Black Lives Movement happening at the moment, being the Pro Vice Chancellor, did you see any? Has it had any effect at the university? Yeah,
it has, and I think it's created a real momentum and movement that people are starting to ask more questions.
Yeah,
that maybe they didn't even know they needed to ask.
Yeah,
that's not just about deaths in custody, but it's about systems, and it's about government, and it's about decisions that they've made that have impacted on our people. Education is one area of that, and I think people want to learn that now. And where I talked previously about the curriculum not really valuing our knowledge, history, and culture, I think there's not just Aboriginal people that feel robbed of that. There's non-Aboriginal people that also feel robbed of that. That they live in this country, and yet they haven't been exposed to some of those amazing cultural protocols and things that could have really benefited them. And so it's fantastic that a lot of staff at the university and students are sort of saying, what can we do? How can How can we be involved? Where can we learn? So, we just recently put out a position statement for the university on the Black Lives Matter movement and created an internal page for all of our staff to access resources and different places they can go to learn new information. And it's quite timely because we're just about to roll out a cultural capability framework, which is about increasing cultural knowledge and understanding right across the university. And so, people want it. So it's really good timing for us now to roll this out and, and think really strategically about how we increase that cultural knowledge and understanding of our staff, which then flows onto our students, which creates better outcomes for our people when regardless of what programs these students are going into, that they're exposed to that knowledge and understanding and different way of thinking, and then when they go out and work in communities that they're going to be more educated on working with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people.
Yeah, I've been to quite a few events of our events, and there's always you get a lot of non-Aboriginal people who do speak at the end who are in that position, an educational or health position, where they just go, I didn't even know about the stolen generation. And I know to Aboriginal people, like, that's just a shock. It's like, how could you not know about that? But that is a lot of non-Aboriginal people in this country, and that's because it's not, I think, taught enough in our public system, school system.
Yeah, and I think there's been a lot of shame as a country around the way that we've been treated, and so rather than.
But do you think we need to see it as shame? Like, for me, it's like, it's just education.
100%, yeah. But I think the shame element has led to people not wanting to talk about it over periods of time, and I think we've got a generation now that they didn't have any decision in that, and so they now say, well, this happened, let's talk about it. So I'm really really excited about the generation that we see now and the concern that they have around social justice issues more generally. I think they're so connected in terms of what's happening socially, and so I think they want that information and they expect to know it.
Look, before I haven't got many more questions for you, which I'm sure you look like you're enjoying yourself, but sweating away there a bit. But achieving your goals as PVC, what else is on the cards for Mr. Nathan Towney? Like, as I said, when I read a lot of your profile, for me, I just thought this fella's next step would be politics.
Nah, I'm not going there.
But you're already in it.
Well, I am, but not official, not technically. That doesn't interest me, mate. I guess the next steps for me is really trying to do the role that I have now effectively. The one thing that really attracted me to the university was the potential to do some more research and study for myself. So actually start to apply the things that have worked for me in education over the last 20 years and put some research around that hopefully might be able to inform and shift some leaders in schools thinking around how to deal with not just Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander learners, but just learners in general. My big belief is that leaders need to create a culture where people want to be.
Yes.
And education is just underpinned by relationships and connection.
Yep.
And that's something that's worked for me, and so that's something that I want to put some research around, and there's some research that's been done in that space, and creating a sense of belonging for people. When historically, especially for our mob, policies and governments have worked, and schools have been a place that actually do the opposite to that.
Yeah.
And where we've been excluded, and that's sort of my area of interest. And mate, I don't know where that's going to take me, but I'm excited about the learning for me, and then if I can then help others to do that, that's great. And there's also some other great opportunities I get to do. I get to work with, I think it was your previous Awabapod guest, Dr. Kelvin Kong, and just being able to work with people like him, where we're looking at an Indigenous health research strategy for the region. And that's really exciting, and just being able to do that and hopefully create a space where we're taking a proactive approach in improving outcomes for our people is something that I just am passionate about, and if I can continue to do that, then that's where I'll head.
When you finish your research and you release it, make sure your logo is the Pro Vice Chancellor superhero outfit.
The cape and might take a selfie with the mask and the cape on it.
I think it'll work. Oh, I'd be terrible.
Bulldogs colours. Just remember that when you design it.
Can I just say, look, it's been an honour and a pleasure to meet you. Before I worked for Awabapod 5 years ago, I was at Toronto High School for 4 years with Mr. Mark McConville out there, who's still out there.
Yep.
Great principal. And trying to get our kids and our people to start thinking outside the box. It is a big task, and I wish you all the best in your studies and research, and I hope you can come up with something that will improve for all of us. I'd just like to thank you, and I hope everything goes well for you.
No, thanks, mate, and really appreciate the invite to come and talk. Thank you.
All right. Just say for me once, I love the Newcastle Knights.
They're my second team.